So we will talk about the clinical trial network for the hospital-based trial in ophthalmology. It is sponsored by BIRAC NBM, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and the date of start of the project was 23rd July 2020. So the sponsor is BIRAC. BIRAC is Biotechnology Industry Research Assistant Council, and National Biopharma Mission is NBM. So the CRO which is monitoring us is Clinical Development Services Agency (CDSA). So these are the people who have sponsored and monitoring this whole process. And the clinical trial network is under the National Biopharma Mission, which is the Industry Academia Collaborative Mission of the Department of Biotechnology. This is basically done to accelerate the development of biopharmaceuticals, especially the early development. NBM is a pan-India program with the main aim of making India a hub for design and development of novel, affordable, and effective biopharmaceutical products and solutions. This program would aid in enhancing India's innovation research and product development capabilities, especially by focusing on development of the vaccines, biologics, and medical devices for combating public health concerns. So that is the need of the thing. So that now India, make in India, all these things are going wild, and so here is a program which strives to make in India biopharmaceuticals at an affordable rate. So it aims to establish clinical trials network, so that network for hospital-based clinical trials in ophthalmology. What it does is it will aid in the biopharmaceutical industry to do these trials in a very fast manner, because we already have the infrastructure ready, and so any biopharmaceutical industry who wants to go into a phase 2 phase 3 trial can very rapidly get the number of patients, because already we have a lot of patients coming in. So we have I am Dr. Gopal. I would be the lead PI. With me would be Dr. Bibhuti Sinha sir from RIO Patna, Dr. Sheba CS madam from RIO Trivandrum, Manab Jyoti Burman from Sri Shankar Deva Netralaya Guwahati, Dr. Alok Sen from Sadguru Netra Chikitsaraya Chitrakoot, and Dr. S. Natarajan from Aditya Jodh Mumbai. And we were advised by none other than Dr. Professor Rajavardhan Asad in the construction of this particular venture. So this is like we have representation all across India, and we are trying for expansion further. So this is the site maps from the south to the west to the east to the central India to the north India. So that is there. So currently we have each of the sites have about 10 ICH GCP trained manpower. Each of these sites have about 10 people who are then 10 to 12 people. It'll have a very experienced manpower. They are all, many of them are having expertise in translational medicine, biomarker research, expertise in global regulatory affairs, and there is a dedicated team for patient stratification, enrollment, a lot of clinical trial coordinators who are trained, and trained manpower to develop artificial intelligence, preclinical and clinical research development, and facilities to develop clinical trial, design data analysis, and assay development. So this is the overview of the trained manpower that we have. Total, there are about 60-65 manpower in all the 6 centers put together, and they are instrumental in bringing out the best in the clinical trials area. So what were the objectives and the milestones right from the beginning till the end? The objective 1 was capacity building across all sites of the network. Objective 2 was multi-centric registry of the network. And objective 3 was to make the sites ready for clinical trial conduct. So going to objective 1, sir. Yeah. So the capacity building across all sites of the network, acceptance of the GLA, manpower recruitment, procurement of common equipment and software, through survey, assess the gaps, and now we have to try to plug the gaps. Development of critical SOPs based on these surveys to meet the objectives. Development of training modules, training the manpower on SOPs and GCP compliance, and then finally harmonize the SOPs, processes, and required infrastructure across all sites. Establishment of IP storage. So these were the initial capacity building measures, so that the manpower got trained, the infrastructure got developed, we found out the gaps, and we tried to plug the gaps. So that is the first step. And the second objective is multi-centric registry. So we started a registry on retinal diseases, especially biosimilar treatable retinal diseases. That is the next agenda. So identification of the vendor, identifying data elements for capture, and ethics approval were done. So then we started the common protocol for establishing a retinal registry. So we had to establish an electronic database, trained the entry operators, data entry operators, and we seeked ethics committee approval for the protocol. And the first registry report was sent to BIRAC. And currently we have somewhere around 5,500 patients in the registry in retina, and we have also started the other registries as well. Now, as we moved on, we had to train those people, the data entry operators, for data entry. Governance and oversight mechanism was in place for checking of the entry validity. It is a multi-step process. So the data would be entered by the data entry operator, and then moved on. It will be evaluated by the clinical trial coordinator, then the quality manager, and the program manager in each site. And the lead program manager would audit 35% of the data overall. And the CDSA will monitor, and they will also do an audit on about 3 to 4% of the entire data. So the report, the governance and the oversight mechanism for checking the entry validity, and data entry, data verification, validation, cleaning, and analysis. These were the objectives in the second stage. And currently the whole data is under data analysis. Registry data would be available for Indian biologic manufacturers, because they would be planning the clinical trials, and they know from which location you can have so many patients. A report of the collated registry data for all diseases for all applicants in the network would be submitted to BIRAC, and submission of the final completion report. Objective 3 was to make the sites ready for clinical trial. Already all the sites were conducting clinical trials, but to make it under the clinical trial network mode was the next objective. And ensure the DCGI or other regulatory bodies for registration of ethics committee, and conduct activities to create patient awareness. We conducted some surveys based on patients, based on clinical trial recruitees, and based on healthcare professionals, and they are all in publication. Assessment of all sites by the industry third party for readiness to take up clinical trial was the next thing. Now, these are the multicentric registries which are currently running under CTN. Common medical retinal diseases, diabetic retinopathy, branch retinal vein occlusion, central retinal vein occlusion, AMD, and uveitis, infectious, non-infectious, systemic diseases, not associated with systemic diseases, immune uveitis, drug-induced uveitis, lens-induced uveitis, traumatic, all these specific uveitic entities. In glaucoma, we had looking at primary and secondary glaucomas, both angle closure and open angle, juvenile and congenital glaucomas. In chronic corneal diseases, we were looking at corneal ulcer, non-infective keratitis, degenerative diseases, ectatic diseases, corneal dystrophy, and also dryness. So these were the things that these are the registries that we have under this thing. Now, this is the data management plan. So you can see that this is a very robust, so doctors would be screening the patients, and then there will be informed consent process. This is a registry informed consent, not a clinical trial. CRC will, the clinical trial coordinator as well as optometrist, will do many of the data collection, and PI will verify and sign the source document. And source document will be then put over to the clinical report form, and then to the electronic data capture. And that will be done by the data entry operators. Once the CRF is completed, the PI will sign it, and then data entering into the electronic data capture, and then the quality check, first quality check by the quality manager, and then quality manager verification with the CRC if there is any clinical trial coordinator, if there is any discrepancy, and if there is a query which is raised by the quality manager, it will be answered by the clinical trial coordinator, and that log is available. And then the quality manager finally verifies the record and locks it for the project manager to check, and the project manager data looks at with the PI's log as well. So this is the basic plan. PI e-signed the records and locks it. Okay. The way forward in this large clinical trial network is initiation of national and international collaborative research, and development of cost-effective community-based screening tools, point-of-care kits, IITs, health economic models, development of reading center. These are all the way forward that we have, and what we plan to have is to enhance this network by asking more and more people to collaborate with us in clinical research so that we can brainstorm together and move forward and make India a hub for pharmaceutical research. Thank you very much. We can have a small bit of discussion after each talk because we have the liberty of time, I think. Natarajan sir is coming? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sir, you want to ask something?
Actually, I represent one of the largest networks, eye hospital networks of Eastern India. And we have had...
Which network is it, sir?
Disha Eye Hospital.
Disha, yeah.
Yeah. So we have right now a few multicentric trials going on. So we have GCP trained personnel ready. And I personally have been PIs in a few of those trials as well as co-investigating in some other trials. Now, given our expertise and our infrastructure that we have, how can we join this network?
Yeah. This network is started by the government of India. So probably we have to develop a larger consortium because we all know about DRCR network and how they completely changed the policy of management. And that policies we cannot adopt because we are India and we are a large country, we are a poor country, we are a hungry country. We cannot just adopt it just like that. We cannot have 9 injections in the first year for a lot of patients. Our number of average injections is about 2.1. So we cannot adopt that. So we need to find out our own policies, and with 6 centers it will be extremely difficult to make policy making changes. So it has to move to somewhere around 25 to 30 centers. So we would be welcoming you to join us, but there are a lot of challenges here. One of the challenges is that we require to have some harmonization of the standard operating procedures because each place will have its own SOPs in place. You are completely aware of that, but some degree of harmonization is required. Like for example, ethics committee, if your ethics committee is meeting once in 2 weeks, that will be really great. If it is meeting once in 4 months, it will not be really great because if you want to push some change or push some study, then it would be a little difficult. So those sort of challenges in individual centers have to be ironed out. Now then what we have to do is, this DBT BIRAC clinical trial network would only be this. But then we have to think and add a larger consortium for Indian ophthalmology research, and that is the way forward. We have to hold our hands together and work forward. We have to sit together and probably sign an MOU. We need to have this data confidentiality agreements, and those are the things that we have to do before we start on. And then all of us should brainstorm, get in policy changing things. Like if there are 30 sites in the network, and if you ask a funding agency for something, they can't easily refuse it because the proposal is going to be very, very strong. Yeah. Thank you very much for asking the question and expressing interest. Yeah. Usually there needs to be a space for informed consent, which is a little bit of a private space. And currently many of the studies may require a video consenting as well, but that is also not very difficult. Then the thing is about an IP storage facility. So most of the companies, when the CROs, when they come for a drug trial, if you do not have a dedicated fridge for that, they may consider giving you a fridge also. So that is also not a very difficult thing. Then another thing is about, if you want to store biosamples, then you may require -20, -70 and all. That is not a mandatory requirement. The mandatory requirement is then an ICH GCP trained clinical trial coordinator type staff who can actually manage the clinical trials. So probably one staff can coordinate 3 or 4 trials comfortably, but more than that would be a little cumbersome for them. Yeah. Next, who is the next? Yeah. So the basic idea is to move it forward by developing, increasing the number of pharma trials. Currently, we are all in the network mode, started multiple clinical trials, pharma based, but that is not the only way of sustenance. We have to have investigator-initiated trials and larger proposals and protocols for funding agencies to move it forward. Yeah. The next talk is by Dr. Manab Jyoti Varman. He'll be speaking about the challenges involved in SOP harmonization. Yeah, that is a very, very difficult thing because each hospitals will have their own SOPs, and Manav will speak about that. Over to you, Manav.
Which one is अभी तो लोड किया था जो SOP yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Gopal Pillai, for inviting me to the this IC and also my co-instructors. So I'm going to speak on SOP synchronization, discipline, and audit in a clinical trial network. So if we go to elements of a clinical trial network, clinical trial quality, there are four major components like the GCP, good clinical practice, SOP, and quality assurance and quality control. These are the four major components of a clinical trial. So what is good clinical practice? It is an international ethical and scientific quality standard for designing, recording, and reporting trials that involve the participation of human subjects. So this is what is defined as a GCP. And the standard operating procedure or SOP in a clinical trials are the standard documents or instructions to achieve uniformity of performance that define the procedure which must be followed to ensure that standards are followed while carrying out the research. So any organization, any even an industry also needs a SOP for their spoon running of activity. So in India, that CDSCO has mandated that all clinical trials should be conducted following the GCP guidelines, and it is of utmost importance that the development of SOPs pertaining to each aspect of clinical trial is complete with GCP, compliance with GCP. So what are the importance of SOP? Then consistency and time saving, ensure compliance and the safety of employees, improve communication and enhance accountability, and maintains organizational knowledge. So these are the benefits of SOP. Without SOP, all these major factors of any trial or any organizational activity is impossible. So coming to clinical trial network, a clinical trial network is a network of sites, medical centers where clinical trials are conducted simultaneously. So a clinical trial may be conducted by a single center or it may be conducted by multiple centers. So these trials are usually big trials with requirements of a large number of participants. So there is the advantage of clinical trial network. So what are the benefits of a clinical trial network? Large number of participants, different geographical locations are included, the possibility of inclusion of wide range of population groups, ability to compare results among centers, and all these benefits increase the acceptability of the study and reduces data bias. It will also lead to study the efficacy between different population groups. So that is the advantage of a clinical trial network. So as SOP is preferred for clinical trial network, so different SOP may have different type of subheadings, but for a clinical trial network, these are the basic subheadings like administrative SOP, clinical SOP, data management SOP, laboratory SOP, and pharmacy SOP. So I'm not going to the details of this. SOP synchronization is another part of a clinical trial network. Already Dr. Gopal Pillai has said that this is a very difficult task because every center has their own working behavior, working pattern. So SOP synchronization is a major component of this multi-center trials. So it is process by which technical guidelines are developed to be uniform across participating centers. So what are the challenges in synchronization of the CTN? SOPs, though they provide all the guidance for conducting a clinical trial, it poses a challenge for multi-center clinical trial networks also. So different sites may have different workflow as already mentioned. SOPs are developed based on requirements of the project, but also has to keep the institutional policies in mind. And regulatory bodies like ethics committee might have different timelines. So all these factors are to be kept in mind when preparing SOPs. So how can we come over these difficulties? So this is by organizing meetings between the different centers. So at every point, we need to some addition and subtraction of different institutional policies. So we should agree on a common SOP template, agree on SOP development process that will work well, create a control document, determine what quality systems SOPs are required and develop, work with the operational experts to create a new basic SOP sheet that supports the merged organization and their goals. So these are the factors that should be considered while synchronizing SOPs. So coming to the quality assurance and quality control. So we can achieve quality assurance through audits. Audits and inspections in clinical trial network is a systematic and independent examination of trial-related activities and documents to determine whether the evaluated activities were conducted and the data were recorded, analyzed, and accurately reported according to the protocol, SOP, GCP, and the applicable regulatory requirements. So an audit is conducted by inspectors employed by government through a competent regulatory authority. And an audit may also be performed by the sponsor or its agent. And the sponsor or that regulatory authority, competent regulatory authority, should communicate with the site at least 1 month before the audit is conducted. So quality of a study should be maintained through audits at different levels. So SOPs for audit provides procedures for the overall hosting of an audit. Principal investigation and quality control managers are the primary responsible person for the audit. Project manager and other CTN staffs, mainly the clinical research coordinator, are involved in preparation, coordination, hosting, and responding to findings, observations for audits conducted by sponsor or CRO. So what are the responsibilities during the audit? A clinical research coordinator has certain responsibilities like to ensure that audit notification shall be written in documents, to ensure that that confirmation acknowledgement is provided by the PI for audit, to obtain the agenda for audit from the sponsor or the research organization, to assist the PI to check audit readiness, to verify all the required documents, to evaluate site readiness like patient safety, SOP compliance, compliance of GCP and ethics committee guidelines, and to evaluate the completion site master file and update all pending action items that are completed before the audit inspection. So these are the responsibilities of a research coordinator. And the project manager or the team leader of the project should have some responsibility like to discuss with the CRC regarding the audit readiness, to arrange meeting with the PI and all staffs to discuss the general aspect of audit, to check the protocol deviation and regulatory non-compliance are recorded and reported as per requirements, to ensure that SAE or adverse effects are reported and recorded adequately, and to ensure that the training records of the team are maintained. Then coming to the principal investigator, to confirm the safety and well-being of the subjects, to evaluate the ethical, legal, regulatory requirements, and also the site SOP, to evaluate the protocol deviation, violation, and also duty delegation log, to evaluate the equipment and facilities available, and to ensure that all the pending issues or actions of monitoring visit are resolved. Then responsibility after audit, the CRC has the following has to follow up with the auditors for audit report if required. CRC has to send the responses or action items of the audit report to project manager for review or inputs. CRC has to ensure that the response or CAP for the action items listed from audit observations are sent to the auditors within the specified time limit, and obtain certificate of audit from the auditors, and file all documents, communications, and certificates appropriately in the investigation site file. So these are the in short about the audit process. Thank you.
Thank you, Manabhai, for this wonderful talk. SOP synchronization is really important part of network. Since 6 or 7 centers are working from different zone, their working pattern is different, and certain guidelines has to be followed. So those guidelines and the principles need to be synchronized at each center if we want to perform like a good team. So it's really important for each one of us. Please, my talk. Coming to my talk, I'll be talking on the challenges which comes while working in a government sector. So with the challenges, the opportunities also comes for arriving at different solutions.
So CTN.
So with the challenges comes the solutions and opportunities also. Now working in a government sector is a little different from working in an institute which is independent financially as well as from decision making point of view. So I'll be talking about the CTN. Dr. Gopal Pillai has already talked a little bit about it. Establishment, what are the challenges and solutions in the government sector? Then the subject selections, data collections, entry, verification, and validation process. I think partly it has been covered by Dr. Gopal Pillai and Manojit also. And what are the industrial challenges? Since the primary principle and the primary objective of this IOCTN was to create a network which will provide opportunity for biosimilar creating pharma industry to utilize the data in order to create different trials, and this registry could have worked on that question. So this is a government sponsored trial. That the name appears to be trial network, but basically this was a clinical registry in the initial phase. So patients were registered, and the good clinical practices were followed in registering those patients, recording their data, interpolations of the data, and finally regarding the objective was to identify how better we can utilize those data. At the same time, it was also regarding creating the trained manpower for working in the network. We know that in different CROs, they are working through their own private network. Now, here comes a government sponsored network which was creating a working hand and a trained manpower pool to work in these areas. So, National Biopharma is an industry academia collaborative mission of Department of Biotechnology, and this was through implementation for the early development of biopharmaceutical. This was the basic aim, and the BIREC started trial in different diseases also, not only in ophthalmology but also in diabetes, also in cancer registry. So multiple trials were started at the same times, and that's how these 6 institute came together. Dr. Rajvardhan Azad was the person who basically brought all these 6 institute: AIMS Kochi, RIO Patna, RIO Trivandrum, SNC Chitrakoot, SSDN Guwahati, and AGH Mumbai. Now all these institute have their own positives and negatives. So we know that in the government sector we have pool of patient, but we are little disorganized. Whereas persons who are working at SNC Chitrakoot or SSDN Guwahati, they are well organized with good number of the patient inputs. So these challenges need to be addressed when we started establishing this. And so those challenges started coming in once we decided to get into the MOU. The MOU was signed, and so the challenges started coming in. The first challenge was to have a clearance from the biomedical for environmental safety. So you know that in government sector you have to comply with principles and the various laws of the state government, and those are very stringent ones. So one has to get all those clearances not only from the biomedical or the Bihar State Pollution Control Board, but we have to get understanding and the clearance from the institute. We have to get clearance from the state government also, since we were supposed to share the data with other institute. So it was little challenging for us. So grant letter was signed, memorandum of understanding was signed, and grant release came in 2020. Now the next challenge was, once we get into the agreement, was to hire good kind of people. Now you know that in government sector hiring itself is challenge. There are certain laws, you have certain reservation policies. Now whether these manpower will be out of preview of those laws or will be under those law, that has to be addressed, because one wrong hiring of person can create problem for the whole city. And so it took nearly 4 to 5 months for achieving those goals in hiring a good number of people and those who were finally trained for this clinical network. The next challenge was, as discussed by Dr. Gopal Pillai, we have, our institute is having ethical committee meeting every fortnightly, after every quarter. So after 3 months, you get the chance to get it cleared, whereas the requirement was little different. So we have to synchronize, we have to manage our projects according to our IEC. However, in during the COVID time, the ethical committee decided to meet on the basis of urgency of projects also. So that opened a kind of window for getting clearance at appropriate time. So then initiation of CTRI was important. Then NABL accreditation. Our lab is one of the best lab in the state, but that is not NABL accredited. Now the CTN network requires NABL accredited lab reports. So we have to go outside our living our own lab to a NABL accredited lab. That itself required a challenge, created a challenge. We have to get clearance from the institute, we have to get clearance from the department, then only we get into this accredited lab agreement. Then came the patient expectation. Now our patients are not paid patients. Most of the patients are unpaid patients, or they pay barely, and they come with some kind of expectation. So once you start registering them, call them for this consenting and other thing, they expect that something good is going to come their way. And once you say that no, it is not attached with any kind of the financial benefit or drug benefit or any other benefit, they get demotivated. So, but somehow those challenges were those challenges were well taken care by once the trained people came into place, and they started motivating patient to get into the registry network to create the data pool. So coming to the CROs, they were looking for ARMD per patients, but most of the patients were diabetic patients. So another challenge was that in our government setup, there is no SMO working, but private entities or individual work under the Department for Clinical Trial at that site. So these SMOs are, I think, market-wise, they are better trained than our people whom we have trained. They are ethically and GCP-wise, they are better trained, but ethically they might not be matching those SMOs who are coming through a private sector. So at our center, we have conducted already 8 trials in last 13 years. Few trials are also under pipeline, but still the challenge is how to utilize this trained manpower for further clinical trial network or the further clinical trials also. So another opportunity was to create kind of capacity building for these kind of activities. Before this trial, most of the patients or most of the trials were having private SMOs, so we were not forced to create the infrastructure. Now our labs are with well oriented and also well structured to basically handle these trials. So this was an opportunity, and that was a gain. So what we got, so CTM ophthalmology is the first national registry. It started at RIO. It attracted a right qualified candidates, and also we trained the persons. The CTN also developed from the 0 level, but now we have a pool of manpower with good clinical practices, training programs, and bioethics. And we have developed a universal module for joint ventures also. So this is what we got from this whole thing. Out of this period, we have already registered around more than 5,000 patients. Out of that, 816 patients were from RIO Patna. The network also created a kind of outreach program also to attract patients, to let them know how this trial network is going to help them, these patients. So to conclude, IOCTN has created opportunity to regulate our site in terms of working as a team in coordination with other site. It was learning from other team members also, from their positives. The staff training was a positive, big positive. Capacity building was a big positive. Robust documentation. I'll say we were unorganized sector, seeing a lot of patient but without data. Now our retina unit is having one of the best documentation out of all the different units working in the department, and that's where the opportunity started coming in, and that's why we agreed to extend the clinical trial network to other units also, so that at least the first gain will be a proper documentation in all the sectors. So this is now GCP compliant and large database creates. So thank you very much to all the team members who have worked on this project. Thank you very much. And now I invite Dr. Alok Sen from SNC Chitrakoot, who has got large patient base, to deliberate on expansion plan for Indian Ophthalmology Network.
Thank you, Vibhuti sir. Good afternoon to you all. Uh, it's indeed an honor to be part of this clinical trial network for us from Chitrakoot. And I'm Dr. Alok Sen. I'm heading the cataract and retina and uveitis services at Chitrakoot. So I'll be talking about strategies to expand the network. So we have in last 3 years, 4 years, we have gone through some very troubled times, but with adversaries, as they say, comes opportunity, as sir was also mentioning in his trial, in his so COVID, what it has taught us is the power of collaboration. And the vaccine that we even in India developed was in record time as compared to any other vaccines in the past. Another, in ophthalmology, what we see is the drcr.net, which is an American, similar to what we are planning to have in India, a clinical trial network, which involves not only big academic institutes, but also private practitioners there. And there are more than 400 retina specialists, and they have conducted many multicentric research, particularly in diabetic eye disease. And mind you, these were not industry-driven research. These were something that had with very pertinent questions. Most of the trials were PI initiated. So that's the importance of collaborating and coming into a network. So the outline of my talk is to why we are 6 centers now. Why do we need to expand? What are the challenges for expansion, and what strategies we have thought of? And it's an open discussion, so you can also put your views on it. So you will all agree, and those who have conducted clinical trials in their hospitals, that the biggest challenge in conducting any clinical trial is to recruit patients. And this is because in India, the patient do not have access to clinical trials. Patient doesn't know where the trial is going on. And most of the trial centers, they passively actually recruit patients. Patients are not going for trial. So that is one major challenge. So what if we expand, like from 6, if we are 30, as Dr. Gopal was mentioning in his presentation, it will allow a larger access, large number of patients can then access to all the multiple centers that we would have in the clinical trial network. It will help in faster recruitment. Most of the companies, they are worried about recruitment because the recruitment is a very troublesome and slow process. And not only that, because you have a wider variety of patients from different geographic, India being a big country, maybe we can expand to even Southeast Asia because we have similar kind of population. it will improve the quality of data that comes out of these trials. Moreover, it will enhance cooperation and resource sharing between the hospitals. And this, along with the faster recruitment of the patients, most of the industries would then would be attracted to us, and that would reduce and speed up the pace at which we conduct clinical trial. So, and most importantly, it will bring together like-minded innovators. Like, as I said, most of the questions or the clinical trials that drcr.net brought about were basically PI initiated. So, lot of brainstorming can come in through collaboration. So, what are the advantages that an institution can have if they come and be part of this clinical trial network? Is that they would get, because once you are in a network, you will get an opportunity to have more researchers or industry driven trials coming to you. You also get visibility, because now you are in a big group and you publish, you get visibility, and also you get funding opportunity, because if we start writing grants together, then we have more chances of getting through. Most importantly, as professionals, because we get training in different aspects of medicine, which we never got during our medical school. Our professional skills and other skills also enhance. So, as there is an opportunity for professional growth, and of course, it's fun to be networking with people who are innovators, like-minded, and it is hand-holding each other and uh, helping each other to move forward. But there are challenges, and these were some of the challenges were already highlighted by the previous speakers. The most important is the resource, because we need fund, and the initial phase of the study or initial part of the development of CTN was funded by BIRAC. Now, in future, if we want to expand, we would need fund. The institutions that would want to connect with us would expect something to for infrastructure, for HR, and other things. So that is one major challenge. There could be regulatory barriers like the ethics committee and other things that can come in. Again, this has been highlighted by the previous two speakers. We need to harmonize our protocols in the OPDs. We all work in different centers, have our own way of work culture. And there could be, as sir was saying, there could be already competitive trials, or already there are centers who are already doing clinical trials. So why would they want to connect with us? But most importantly is this, like, once we are into a network, the decision on intellectual property and data management, especially data safety and security, is thing that we would want to consider before we expand. So what strategies we plan is, like, we want to collaborate with some of the academic or most of the academic centers across India, hospitals, like someone in the crowd in the meeting was mentioning that from Disha Hospital, there were who would like to join us as a network. So we are looking for partners. They could be private hospitals, it could be a government hospital, academic institute, whatever. But we need to expand. The other thing that we look forward to is to have collaboration with other clinical trial networks like diabetic clinical trial network or oncology network, so that we can have cross network collaborations. And as was mentioned previously also, that we are looking at other diseases like cornea, glaucoma, uveitis, so that we can have and you can expand on those aspects as well. The second is, like, how do we make the clinical trial network more visible is by having a strong brand. Like drcr.net is a very strong brand. Anybody would want to join them. So similarly, the IOCTN would like to have a brand of that level. And this we intend to do by publishing high quality research papers, we already have a good, huge data on some of the retinal diseases, and we would expand it to other diseases as well. Like participating in conferences like this would help the CTN be more visible. We have a website, and we also would try to be more active on social media. But important is to have some patient-centric researches, because then most of the ophthalmology or most of the centers would be interested in joining us. So that is something that we would like to address. And as Gopal sir was already mentioning, that not all questions or not all answers that we get from the Western trials may fit into an Indian population. We also look for funding, and if we are a strong multi-centric network, then most of the industries and even the government agencies would be interested in funding us. So that is what we plan to. So in summary, expansion of clinical trial network will not only accelerate the development of treatments and therapies, uh, and ensure a broader application of the clinical trial results, but it will also help in sustaining the clinical trial network in the future. Thank you so much.
The way forward, like we have shifted now this from retinal registry to now other registry also. At the end of the day, what we want to achieve? We want to achieve a kind of network which is trial ready. Somehow, our competitors are the private SMOs. So, we need to understand what is there which is preventing these companies from coming through IOCETN rather than they prefer a private SMO. So, what it could be?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question, because we already as before, even before the birth of clinical trial, Indian Ophthalmology Clinical Trial Network, the trials were going on, and there are established SMOs who help conduct trial in different organizations. But the thing is, these are mostly industry driven, and as I said in my starting at the start itself, that we need to look into questions that are more pertinent to in our population. And you will agree, and our data also shows that most of the industries, they are more interested in doing trials on AMD, while our registry shows that we have more number of diabetic patients in India. So there is a disconnect between what we are seeing as clinicians and what companies want us to investigate. So if we have a strong body, or if we have a stronger network, we are 6 now, maybe in future if each center can have 5 or 6 more centers attached to it, and if we have 30-40 centers across India, and may even more, then probably even the industry people would have to think. The second thing is, not only that, uh, because now we are not as visible as the SMOs probably are to the industry, we need to make ourselves more visible, at least to the industries. That is what we need to project ourselves as a strong body, which with a very strong network. And we, because they are looking for their primary need is patients recruitment. That is what they want, and faster recruitment. If we can ensure that we would be able to do that with our strength, then probably the industry would come to us. Yes. Thank you.
What we want to become would be a policy changer. That is the final this thing, because we are sponsored by government of India. Our data would be readily accessible, and they are monitoring us. So whatever data that we are generating would be very, I mean, it is not pharma driven sort of data. So it will have a lot more veracity, and so policy changes is what we have to look at. Like for example, Singapore, for example, when that anti-VEGFs came in, they decided that they are going to take single vial of bevacizumab and give to patients. What would be the economic financial impact of such a decision in Indian situation? It will be huge. I mean, instead of 5 injections, 6 injections in a year, you may require 7 injections in a year. But that really doesn't make one small vial of bevacizumab will be 500 rupees instead of shelling out 15,000 rupees per injection per patient. That is the difference in terms of retina. But in terms of each of those, whichever innovation is coming from the West, it comes with a cost. We all know that if an imaging equipment, if you have to put one software, they will say 7 lakhs, 8 lakhs. That is the cost that they are putting. So we require to customize to ourselves and be a strong network. Nataraj, yeah. Yeah, that's what I told, sir. So probably, yeah, you have to enlarge in terms of a consortium, people who are like-minded. That is why I put a one. Are you ready to collaborate with us in each of the 5,000 bags that we have put? So I think that there will be 100 people who will be interested, and when we talk to them, finally it may narrow down to 50, or finally it will materialize to 20. But that itself is a big number in India if we have like-minded people to have consortium. Because see, everybody is looking at outcome-based disease. I mean registries. Yeah, everybody is looking at that, and that is a future. Data is a future, and we have a huge volume. China has already put in a lot of registries, and they have outcome-based research. So we are a little lagging behind, and we need to come up with that. Over to Natarajan sir. How is the private sector in terms of research collaboration? What are the challenges? What are the strengths? Sir will talk to us.
Thank you, Gopal, for having me, and thanks to Partha for making me run from morning to so many sessions. So, challenges in developing a clinical trial network in India, a private institution perspective. So, to establish a hospital-based clinical trial network in ophthalmology, thanks to Dr. Gopal Pillai and our other PIs, specifically Gopal Pillai, because I think in the initial time, I remember talking to him when he was working with the genetics in Amrita, and I said we would like to work with you. And same time, Dr. Azad is actually also heads my research team in Mumbai. So with him, I think this was possible. So I think I'm sure you have spoken about all this and our various collaborating side. So this is initiated by the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistant Council, BIRAC, and there is actually, I would like everybody to visit that website. They have a lot of funds. I think the only thing is to how to write an impressive grant which is practical, and also to make it to implement it. And now we are having that's the challenge which we are facing, and we are assisting Gopal Pillai for that, to develop a national collaborative organization for ophthalmology studies. Now, thanks to again Gopal for establishing it, and we call it AIOC2023, to develop a common platform for protocols, policies, data sharing for ease of operations of clinical trial. And actually, all this has helped a private establishment like mine to streamline, to enable and nurture an ecosystem for preparing India's technological and product development capabilities in providing dedicated ophthalmic products, to promote further expansion of this network, to cover more institutions in each region, and envisage financial sustainability of the network through partnership and collaboration with Indian companies in the next stage. We have already written a second project on inherited retinal degeneration. So this was the main objective, which we are really capacity building, multicentric registry, and we are now focusing on the third objective, the clinical trial conduct readiness, and approach industry, third-party agents to initiate trials at the center. This is our site facility and infrastructure. That time I was running the hospital, and we created this for this. So the challenges faced is manpower turnover in a private hospital, particularly the 6 institutes are placed in Patna, Trivandrum, Cochin, Chitrakoot, and Mumbai, and the cost of living in Mumbai is unfortunately high, and somehow the hospital, by the time I've been transferred to Dr. Agarwal, says I'm still in the negotiation to top up the money given along with the what we get from Government of India, but that's still a challenge. They are not convinced. Patient recruitment, and that's because we don't have a charity right now, so we have Now, depending on the outreach activities of the foundation, which we work in the slums, institutional review board approval. Fortunately, we have our own negotiative, administrative, and regulatory requirement. Establishing a clinical trial network in ophthalmology under BARAC is a complex undertaking that involves numerous challenges and requires careful attention to detail. And that's what in the private setup we have learned. One of the primary challenges in establishing a clinical trial network is recruiting qualified and interested personnel, particularly passionate person, which is what I'm struggling. An ophthalmology clinical trial requires a diverse team of professionals, including ophthalmologists, clinical research coordinators, data managers, etc. Identifying individuals with the necessary expertise and experience can be time consuming and challenging. And when experienced personnel, the other problem we face is they take this as a stepping stone. They get well trained, and then somebody will give 10,000 rupees more, and they will leave the job. So when the experienced personnel leave the clinical trial network, there's a risk of losing valuable institutional knowledge and expertise. And once personnel are recruited, comprehensive training need to be implemented to ensure they have the required knowledge and skills to conduct trials effectively. Factors that contribute to manpower turnover include competitive job markets, limited career advancement. I think this is another problem because it's 3 years and they are already knowing that after that we will not get this job. So unless as a main hospital we can look after them, inadequate compensation, which is a challenge in Mumbai, and the demanding nature of clinical trial network. Implementing strategies to enhance job satisfaction, providing professional development opportunities, which is what I'm trying to do as a part of the Agarwal group of hospitals, and offering competitive remuneration packages are important for reducing turnover rates. Patient recruitment refers to the process of identifying, engaging, and enrolling eligible individuals into clinical trial. Ophthalmology clinical trial often require participants with specific eye conditions or diseases. Finding a sufficient number of eligible patients within limited geographical area or a specific demographic can be challenging. It requires specific eligibility criteria to ensure the safety and efficacy of the interventions being tested. These criteria may include age, specific ophthalmic conditions, disease severity, and other medical morbidities. Patient recruitment. Engaging potential participants, obtaining informed consent are critical aspects of the recruitment process. Patient must understand the purpose, risks, and benefits of clinical trial to make an informed decision to participate. And we have the problem of, compared to the charitable hospital, we have a low turnover and high financial return. So that's which we have to match. But my desire is to take part in this clinical trial network. That's why, with a great difficulty, I support my staff. And building trust with the potential participants and their caregivers is crucial for successful recruitment. Since it is a single specialty private institution, the footfall of OPD was less compared to government institution. The patient felt concerned regarding data security, hence avoided consenting for the study. That's a private patient problem. Patient need assurance that their well-being and rights will be protected throughout the trial. Patients coming to OPD are usually referred by other doctors as a last resort when most of the treatment methods have failed to recover visions of the patients. Due to this, availability of treatment-naive patients is too less in a hospital like mine. And a lot of clinical trials have been recruitment of treatment-naive patients, hence this becomes a limitation. So outreach activities should include educational campaigns that highlight the benefits of participation, ethical consideration, and the impact on advancing ophthalmic treatment. Establishing metrics to measure the reach, engagement, and conversion rates of outreach efforts can provide insights into their success. Outreach programs are usually conducted in rural areas. Patients from rural areas, though identified as prospects for clinical research, may not comply with traveling to the study centers. That's also we are trying to bridge the gap. Identifying patients with specific conditions for a clinical trial inclusion is difficult during outreach program. Only a partial screening will be provided with plans of detailed examination prepared at the main center. With a multicentric study, it is difficult to coordinate the review meetings in every institute consistently. Each institute's review suggestions may require several revisions and provide numerous justifications before being approved. We have now, fortunately, a specific person looking after this, clinical research coordinator, who is now doing the ethical committee requirements. Only this, because most large multicentric clinical trial require multiple IRB approvals. The discrepancies in the IRB determinations and standard across the nation complicate and slow down the clinical trial process. They may also prevent investigators from implementing the same trial protocols across all study sites, which is essential for producing reliable trial results. to negotiate administrative and regulatory requirements, internal reviews of a clinical trials, various components required by a private institution, a public organization, or a pharmaceutical business may cause the trial start to be severely delayed. Clinical trial conduct is impacted by internal review standards set by both national and state regulatory agencies. Investigators face a big task in adhering to these many rules. As a result of the delays, trials take longer to complete and are less effective overall. So this we are doing clinical trial under the CTN. We have various people approached the Bayer, Reliance, IVU, there are some Indian pharmaceutical, then international doctor Gopal PILLAI is trying. And then the lessons learned from a clinical trial network. Standardized protocol. Following a standardized common protocol for research study with multiple centers gave new perspectives and working routines. I'm happy some staff are sticking back and they're working on it. I hope we can induce this enthusiasm and interest in the others. And working on publication, the importance of publishing the research study at the center is crucial in spreading knowledge and experience with the medical community. The same staff, I'm trying to give them some more publications by making them work. So the idea is to keep them apart from the our clinical trial network, whether anything else they can do, so that they have more papers in their name, so that they will probably take this as an incentive and stay back. Data management. The process of data collection, storage, and analysis are found to be an integral part of clinical research, and the facilities for data management system is established. Protocol development. The team is encouraged to write protocols for clinical studies in collaboration with the other clinical trial network. The IEC approval, following a common dossier preparation format and faster coordination among the centers help in timely submission and review presentations. Updates on clinical trial inquiries. The centers are consistently updated with clinical trial feasibilities and the status internally. So thank you very much for a patient listening.
Thank you, sir. We are already running short of time, beyond
okay.
time. So
Okay.
thank you for patient listening to this IOCTN trial. And the website which sir has given is basically available with all the data and all the information regarding this clinical trial network. So if anyone is interested to join that, they can always approach us. Thank you, Natarajan sir.